I'm Mark Melny. I invented the Melny connector, and it's going to make a lot of waves in the electrical industry. When I came up with the idea, I literally looked up in my garage and saw a package of Garner Bender crimps. And a friend of mine had just put together an electrical clock that took over 200 crimps, and he couldn't even shake my hand. His hand was so sore from crimping the device. So what happened is that we went into my garage. I literally looked at this box and I thought, dang, there's gotta be an easier way. They've been doing this for 50, 60 years. And the idea just came to me, drew up the entire design, and that was the start of the invention. The idea came to me that something similar to a Chinese finger trap would be really essential for the electrical industry. Something that when you pulled the conductor hard, the harder you pulled it, the more it pulled back, and it had a complete wrapping of the conductor with your connector, so that you have a perfect environment for the electrical transfer. I got involved with an organization called Kickstand, and by doing that, it opened up doors to a fast prototyping lab out of Boise State University called Tech Help. And with their help, I brought my idea and I fleshed it out into what it is today, which is an all-purpose connector for single wire. This connector is for 4/0 copper wire. We use a copper insert, and then the connector is simply put together by hand. The element inside there that's like the Chinese finger trap actually constricts down on top of the conductor, and the harder you pull, the more it constricts. And then the gland makes the insulation waterproof. This is air and water tight. Once these connections are made, then they're put inside of the ground, and they're subject to all the elements and everything else. One of the things that I really want to pursue is what the industry need is. If we find that certain parts of industry has design differences that they would like us to accommodate, then we could do that. Whatever is being crimped now should be able to be changed over to a Melny design. This is going to be really something. Anybody who's got to connect wires together, it's going to really change things. Idaho National Laboratory came on when we were just an IP. My product had won the statewide contest, so they offered us to help us with the testing. And we just finished our tests for the amperage and for the voltage breakout. The amperage test was performed a number of times. We have a trend at this point to see what our devices will do for future use.
Today we measured 3 different points of temperature, one on the outside of the insulation, center of the connector, one drilled through the connector down to the copper insert, where we measured the internal temperature, and then one of just the cable directly outside of it. In the case of the 4/0 we were testing, it was 360 amps. And once it's at 360 amps, the connector will start to heat up. Once it finally levels off for a while and maintains within 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, that's when you can consider it to have reached a stable temperature. And then whatever the maximums are at that point are what UL compares to their standard.
The voltage test, we were able to test our product and exceed what the UL test would be by a factor of 5 or 6 times greater than what the UL would perform on our products.
I mean, the standard UL test is to load it up to 3,400 volts and it has to hold it for 1 minute. And so, I mean, our connectors blow through that. That's nothing for them. And so then after that, just for fun, because we have the equipment to do it, we keep adding more and more voltage till eventually it pops out of there. and it usually goes at least 6 times what UL requires.
The products that we tested today were strictly prototypes. These were built on an SLA printer type machine, and they still passed all of the tests to be able to be qualified under the UL testing. The products that we will be using for our production line, these will be plastics that have already been pre-approved by UL. So we would be looking at a much stronger product with the materials that we would be using for the production run.
My name is Chris Rogers, and I've been in the trade for about 13 years. When we heard about the Melny connector, it was something that sparked our interest. The current process that we have for fixing secondary faults on a line is a pretty lengthy process. The one thing about the hand crimping tools is that you need quite a bit of room to crimp. And when you dig down, if you have a foot space, it's very restricting. Once we have the tools prepared, once we've stripped the conductors back, find the fault, then actually getting the right size of crimps for the wire itself is always a big concern in the field. It takes quite a bit of time. When we did the test on the Melny connector versus the older process, the crimp splice, we did them side by side, and I did a crimp splice to begin with. And then the first time we used the Melny connector, I was shown kind of the process beforehand, and it was extremely easier. And the length of time was cut, in half by far. To 1, I would use a Melny connector over a crimp splice any day. It is incredibly simple.